somehow because
No, by Friday.
Take it, it's not much there.
how long do they have down there? But instead of snowing, I can do it. I can read over that.
Actually,
Okay.
it's, okay.
Uh,
Yes, okay.
Hmm.
Call the meeting to order. Action taken at today's meeting is to forward recommendation for final approval to the next school board meeting. This meeting of the Board of Education held in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for comments by members of the public during the meeting as indicated on the agenda. Of the public wishing to address the board, any of the topics included on tonight's agenda may do so by completing a public comment sign-up sheet and handing it up front here to Ann. Comments should be focused on the items being considered by the board and should be restricted to no more than 3 minutes in length. That will move into the report of the superintendent.
All right. My first informational item is Principal Kaylin with an update on Bryant.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
We'll keep it short and sweet. The weather's getting a little nasty out there. You want to stuck here? It's not, you fix that. So.
Yeah, Terry, that.
To start out with some of our celebrations, just a couple of the big items that we kind of put in place that are just totally functioning this year and working awesome. EMLSS is fully implemented into our schedule. It looks great because we have as each grade level is getting 3 to 5 students pulled out every half hour. So we have 2 groups being pulled per grade level. So up to 10 kids are getting extra time working with Kelly Jobin, our EMLSS instructor, and she's amazing. She's doing an awesome job. I'll touch a little bit more on that later, but 2 counselor structure is making a huge impact for us. My counselors are young, they are energetic, and they are very useful. They're even in a preventative measure, we're basically getting them out on the playground during our recess times, our unstructured times, and it's making a huge difference in our behaviors in school and just the overall SEL. And our PBIS celebrations are making a huge impact. We're doing some fun stuff. We're doing more class-wide celebrations as well as individual weekly celebrations. Our monthly focus, we do it and we basically award it to a child who is doing something, whoever recognizes it, and then we put their name in a bowl for a drawing, and if their name gets drawn at the end of the month, they win their classmates and themselves a pizza party. So we're doing that. It's a huge impact. So some challenges that we're still seeing. I've been working pretty closely with Eva Gray, who is our social worker at Bryant, and we're reaching out to a lot of families. We just struggle with attendance. It's hard to get some families to get their kids to school. And I think when we look at some of our data, that's what's impacting some of our academic data as well. And I'll touch base on that when I talk about our EMLS kiddos, but it's a struggle, but we're working on it.
Hey, Jason, when I was helping out at Bryant when you were gone, I noticed not only are they missing school, but they're late too. So
Yep.
they might be coming to school, but it might be an hour later. And unfortunately, that's when a lot of our key core instruction is happening, is right away at 9 o'clock. So,
We'll start right away.
yep.
Bryant is still significant when it comes to mental health and SEL needs. We have a lot of kiddos and families that are just requiring some extra supports and some new interventions. So I put our paraprofessional schedule up there. I have an amazing staff, and my entire support staff is unreal, super flexible, just awesome all around. But we're in version 7 already of our schedule. So we're constantly changing to make, kind of meet the needs of our kids. And some of our kids are in and out of the building in terms of maybe getting some support elsewhere and then coming back in 3 or 4 weeks later. And so we're just trying to be flexible and make it work for the kids and also our staff. And then vertical team collaboration, I put that up there just because I'd like to see more time. I want to figure out more time for our 1st or 2nd grade or 3rd grade or 4th grade and our 5th grade teams to work together to talk about our core instruction, because some teams have one piece of core instruction down pat. They have some really good strategies and techniques that they use. And I think if we're sharing that across the entire school, it's only going to make us a little bit better. It's kind of when you have a skill, to share that skill with everybody else is super important. So we're trying to build some time and space into our staff time the mornings, but then also into our professional developments to make that happen, to have that collaboration. Our goals this year in our CIP by spring of 2023, 85 out of 141 students, grades 3-5, that's about 60% of our kids. We want them to be proficient or advanced on the ELA portion of the exam. And that's our first kind of our academic goal there. In the spring of 2023, we also want to see 85% of our students or more at Bryant Elementary fall into the low risk category in that social emotional screener of the SABRE screening. We are doing that as an action item. We're doing it 3 times throughout the year. So our second window is coming up here in February, but we'll get some more data on that to see how we're progressing on that item. Our action steps to tackle those 2 big goals. We decided as a staff, we're going to tackle core universal instruction, and it's going to be our focus. It's not that they weren't doing it before. We're just making it intentional. We're talking about it in our staff meetings. And like I said earlier, we're sharing ideas to make it more impactful in the classroom. And it's been great. Teachers and counselors are implementing the core universal SEL curriculum, the second step, into the classroom. Our teachers and our counselors are together during that counselor time, and they bring that message back into the classroom and they use it in their daily SEL routines as well. So a lot of the same message being shared, not only by our counselors, by our teachers, by our support staff, by administration. And like I said, we're going to administer the SABRE screening fall, winter, and spring. Our second window is coming up here in 4 weeks after our FastBridge window for our math and our ELA testing. But that will give us some more data so we can see how we're doing with the social emotional support of our kids. I'm on a timetable here, so I feel like I'm rushing.
You're doing good. You're doing good.
How we're monitoring our progress. Our SLT team is in our meetings. We share our staff meetings with our SLT meeting. And so what we're doing is our group is modeling some of those best practices. We're carrying over a lot of what the instructional coaches are doing with us in our school SLT. And we're bringing it back into our building time. Our instructional coach collaboration has been awesome. Amy and Sarah are always extremely accessible, but Amy's been the one who's kind of interjected herself into our building. And a lot of I'm pretty proud of the fact that a lot of my groups, my grade levels are reaching out to her, and she's coming in and she's actually modeling in their classrooms right now. And our teachers are just picking up on a couple of new strategies here and there by request. So it's a very collaborative effort on all parts. I've been in obviously PLC meetings on a weekly basis, but Crystal shared with me at the beginning of the year the look fors for English language arts and also kind of our math instruction. And we are using that as a PLC kind of accountability self-monitoring tool. It's not something that I collect, but it's basically what if Crystal and I went into their classrooms and watched them teach, we would be looking for certain things happening. And they're actually on a monthly basis, I make sure that we are looking at the sheet and they are telling me firsthand, like, hey, here's what we're doing really well. Here's what we need a little bit of help with. And that's kind of where I see that vertical team collaboration kind of fitting in. So like if they're missing a piece of core instruction or they're feeling like they're not hitting it, that, hey, maybe I got another team in another grade level that can help out, or Amy Patel comes in or Sarah comes in and works with that group to kind of be intentional about making it a little bit better in the classroom. So it's nice because they're self-monitoring. It's not something that I'm holding over them. They're just really being intentional about being better. EduClimber review. With our PLCs, we're constantly looking at our data. Kelly Jobin, our EMLSS instructor, she has that data out in front of her on a weekly basis, and she is very, very particular in making sure that the teachers know those tier 3 kiddos that are working with her, how they're progressing, what we need to do, but we're also doing it tier 1 and tier 2. We're taking a look at what our kids need on a weekly basis in our classrooms. Like I said, Amy Patel has been working with grade levels, and our counselor groups are phenomenal right now. Hallie and Matt, both my counselors, have been creating small group instruction for those kids that require some more social emotional skill help. Just day-to-day things like how do we behave in certain situations, and they put together some groups based on input from the teachers as well as what they see when the instructor times are happening, like in recess and lunch. And then the CICO is just our check-in and check-outs. We have probably 10 to 15 students that are checking in with an adult and checking out with an adult before and after school every single day, just because they need it. So far, our FastBridge second window is starting next Monday. And Kelly already has a schedule already put together and our teachers are ready to deliver. So we'll get some second round data on how we are doing at that point in time. But right now, is there a pointer on this one? Yes. This number right here, 35 of our 301 students are currently receiving tier 3 supports from Kelly. Of those, 74% are on track right now. And their goals look a little bit different per kiddo, just based on what their needs are. But 74% are on track. The other 26%, we were talking about this a little bit today. One of those big challenges is attendance. If the kids aren't coming, Kelly's working with those groups on a regular basis every day.
Can I
And
ask, do you see something being a common denominator for attendance? Is it transportation issues? Is there something that you can pinpoint more specifically, or is it vary for every
it
child?
varies.
It's all over.
It could be illnesses, it could be parents just not getting their kids there, or they're just a little bit more lenient about when they go, when they stay home. Could be they have a brother and a sister that's sick one day, so they don't bring both. I mean, it varies. It's just, we're on a pretty regular basis. About 10% of our kids are out every day. So
So just different ones? It's not like the same group.
we do have ones that Eva and I are tracking on a regular basis.
Okay.
There are some significantly absent kids, but yeah, it can vary.
Okay.
And our Savers window is coming up in February, where we're going to be able to track our SEL data. Kind of cool. I can show you this. Our referral number has decreased. It's not that we're discouraging our teachers to write less referrals. We're actually I make a point to say that, no, we need documentation. So if you need to write something up, we write it up and we deal with it how we need to deal with it. So it's not that we're trying not to write them. We're seeing a decrease in our referrals right now. This is this year by month. Obviously we're getting some systems in place. I knew kids needed to figure out kind of how it works in the building, and I just see we're moving in the right direction. I know December and November were shorter months with vacations and professional development, but the bottom line is I don't see it on a regular basis. It's not something that I spend the majority of my day doing like I did in October. So our PBIS is working, our counselors are working on building structures, and our teachers are holding kids accountable. I myself and my counselors are pushing more into classrooms. So if we have a problem with the kiddo, the teacher's actually handling the situation, and I push into the classroom, or my counselors, we watch the class while they deal with it. That way they don't lose space with the kids and they're handling it on their own. And but it's been good. And then when we look at the distribution of referrals, I know you can't see what each of them mean, but the blue here means that kids have 0 to 1 referrals. So 92% of our population are doing their job on a regular basis. They're positive social members of our community. The bottom one there is 6+, and in our entire building, there's 7 students that are those kids that are receiving the majority of the referrals. So like that to me just, and we have created some interventions to supports that we have in place. We have 3 of those students who are on one-on-one supports with paraprofessionals at this point in time, because we need to, not only just for their educational value, but also just the safety of other kids in school, or just making sure that we function regularly on a regular basis. So I see that those things they're kind of making a difference. I appreciate all the work from my staff.
Yeah, you did good.
That's good. Very well. Thank you.
We normally have our student rep, but he is going to join us next week. So we'll wait for his report next week.
All right. Thank you. Then that will move into committee agenda, starting off with the Budget and Insurance Committee.
Right. I have 3 action items tonight. The first is gifts, grants, and bequests. Administration recommends approval to accept gifts, grants, and bequests received in the past month.
Move to approve. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any further discussion?
Impressive list again.
Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion carries. We have a new school activity account. The committee recommends approval for requests for new school activity account for attendance incentives at Superior Middle School.
Move to approve. Second.
Shannon, do you want to share at all about the process and why they're seeing that today?
So, much like when Smart Manufacturing got their activity account forward, there was a donation made to the PBIS. Middle school attendance incentives, I'm sorry, was made in relation to that. So then Mary AP decided to go ahead and create this activity account for our guidelines that the board needs to approve any new accounts.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And the last action item is CISA 12 property purchase. Consider approval of the CISA 12 Board of Control resolution to purchase real property for CISA 12 usage. I see here that, yeah,
To approve.
Second.
is there any discussion?
Additional.
I'll share a little bit of, I was in a meeting today with Nick, our CISA 12 director. Laura's not on, is she? Because she was a part, okay. I just want to double check because she has more information. Laura sits on the Board of Controls for CISA 12, where this was discussed a couple weeks ago. This is the same resolution that we brought forward, gosh, I guess it was last summer at this point. CISA 12 is in need of a new building. They know that purchasing an existing building is most cost effective. There were some questions and concerns from some school boards last time this was brought forward. They ultimately need, I believe it's 13 of the districts to pass this resolution to move forward. In addition to not having 13 pass that resolution last time, they also lost the site. So it was up for sale and then they pulled the offer. So they've been looking since then for another location and they found this location that they think is appropriate for their needs. Ultimately, they have a very large space with significant maintenance needs, and so this space would be much more cost effective. They're looking for each district to support the purchase of this building equally, and I support that as a to move forward. Although we have the largest student population in CISA 12, we use their services the least amount, and yet we all have equal access to that building. So I support all of our school districts sharing the cost of that equally. And that's what this resolution is for tonight.
Do we have any idea why it didn't pass the first time around? Why some of the school districts didn't pass it?
Some it was tabled. Some of them they had questions. Nick said that he's been trying to reach out to those districts that had those questions and try to answer some of those on the front end of this resolution this time around. So the biggest barrier last time really was the sale of that building fell through. And so they had to just kind of stop the process.
Does he have any feel for from the last time and even to this time that if it is shared by everybody equally, does he think there's going to be people that'll say, no, we're not going to go with this? Is that a barrier?
When I asked him that question today, he didn't feel that was a barrier. He was positive in that the Board of Controls felt this was the right approach. So Laura is our rep on that Board of Controls. She did email saying she's in support of moving forward with this, given the dialogue that happened between the other board members from the other school districts. So.
What is it exactly we use CISA for?
Erica, do you know off the top of your head which special education services we
Yeah.
use?
We do, we contract with special education services through their audiologist, and our orientation and mobility specialist. And Jen provides a lot of services and consult to the special education department and holds monthly director meetings as well as some new director meetings. So we do get quite a bit of support from CISA. In fact, I'll be headed there on Thursday, weather permitting.
I don't know if they do anymore, but they used to help write grants for us too.
They do some work around, they like our work around Perkins and some of those other tech, CTE types of supports. They do help with some of those grants and providing some guidance and suggestions around that. Do they do some work around safety or is that? It's different. That's a CISA we work with. Okay.
We also use them for some student things. For example, they organize the regional quiz bowl, like teams from all of our districts. So like our high school quiz bowl team, like we pay a fee for basically the conference of our high school quiz bowl team. We also pay them for our regional organization of our Battle of the Books competition. You kind of need to be part of a conference to have others to compete with on those things. So we do pay fees to them for our students to be able to participate in those things.
One of the significant services that we do not tap into that I think many of the CISA 12 districts do utilize is the professional development for the teachers. They provide a lot of curriculum and instruction support, and because we have our own curriculum and instruction department, our own instructional coaches, we do not necessarily tap in to those supports.
Have they communicated why they have a need for physical space versus working remotely or other troubleshooting?
I am not sure. I have asked those same questions. I think they prefer a physical space.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And this is a one-time fee?
Yes.
Where's the 35,000 come from?
Well, we had.
Yeah, I just
based on this
asked.
Last approval, we had already slotted money towards that. I can't quite remember if it was 30, but I feel
I
like.
think this is a little more than the original purchase.
I was thinking
Yeah.
32 or 33.
Yeah, 32 or 33, which was already in the budget because of the approval here. So it's there.
No, so there's three options, so it's all based on the equal.
He mapped out the three different options. And like I said, dividing those costs equally to me seems the most fair.
Right.
And so he wanted to show what that would look like across districts if it wasn't that model we used.
So that's what we're voting on is the equal share.
Correct. Yep.
And do we receive $35,000 worth of professional guidance from them?
Well, we pay also, we have a contract with CISA. So the services that we tap into that like, for example, Erica just described,
Okay.
pay for those. So this would be in addition to the service contract that we sign annually. And you guys will see that contract probably in April. You'll see that's when we typically bring it forward to the board for approval, March or April.
So I guess my biggest setback in discussion is looking ahead to budget purposes for this district.
Mm-hmm.
And that was 35,000. 35,000 is a lot to me. Probably not a lot in this, the scheme of what we actually
72 million.
spend, but nonetheless, 35,000 is a lot, and putting money towards this, I think, is, in my opinion, kind of bad timing for right now, looking ahead for budget wise.
I would say I prefer it's now as opposed to a year and a half from now or a year from now. Knowing that we've already budgeted for this expense, knowing we had it coming, we do have this incorporated into this budget. So that I feel better about that. If this were to come a year from now, I'd have much more concern.
I agree. That was one of my concerns is, looking ahead and being potentially 3.4 million deficit. That's a lot. But I do appreciate hearing what we utilize from CISA 12 because I wasn't fully understanding what we all use from it. So I do appreciate that.
And although we are the largest district and we do utilize them the least amount, it is important for me as a colleague to my neighbors that we are good partners. So that's important to me that I support our teachers and our educators and our CISA too, and not just looking out for ourselves.
If we keep kicking the can down the road, it's just going to become more expensive.
They truly, that's my concern, and they truly do need a new space.
Yeah.
I have asked the question, Mike, going back to, I hesitated to answer your question because I did ask that question. The reason I asked that question is we could be tapping into people from a larger geographic area as opposed to just Ashland. We could have people working in Hayward or Superior. So that was the question I posed. When I asked the question, the response was they feel this current model is the model they want to continue with.
So as a
independent company, they'll own the building and.
It is their building. They maintain the cost.
And I know I brought it up before, but I know we're responsible for our district, but I do wonder if some of the smaller districts voted no, because $35,000 to, the tiny schools of Butternut might be a bigger deal than it
Yeah,
is to
that was
us,
some of
a
their-
bigger impact. So I do, and just like you're saying, a good neighbor, I kind of consider that too,
Right,
because,
right.
South Shore, right down,
Right.
so it's a lot, but
But knowing
If
those
you-
little districts also utilize those services far more than we do too.
Mhm. Yeah.
Did you have something? Sorry, I saw you in the corner of my eye.
It's important, sometimes the connection to CISA is our connection to Madison. And often, like in my role with state assessments, data, that piece of it, a lot of our information from the DPI comes from CISA, and then we meet as a CISA, and so the support there, and whether we do that virtually or in person, but it is, I think, an important link, as Amy said, being good neighbors, but also it keeps us connected. Sometimes we're a little isolated from
Right.
Madison.
We're able to communicate as a region when we need to.
Yep, and it helps support our voice when they take things back to Madison from a region, so.
sure.
That's a good point.
Sorry, I wish I would have emailed some of my questions beforehand.
This is only to push forward for next week. So if I need to find out some more information.
Private organization, do we know their financials? Like, do we know how they're operating, or I know it's really getting, but when someone's asking for basically a substantial amount of money to buy something for their company, I kind of want to know, like, how do they appropriate their funds and things like that? Like, that's something that as we do, they probably don't do.
Well, Laura would be sitting on that board of controls and would be able to answer some of those, and she would be able to answer a lot of those questions if she was here tonight.
I can email them to her. I think I'd
Yeah,
usually get them answered.
well, and if she has information, I can share it with the whole board too before Monday.
Thank you.
And I would say, they don't get state revenue like we do. They don't have students that generate revenue.
Yeah.
So they are purely funded out of the services that we pay for.
Makes sense.
So like, for example, if I said to them, so that's why we generate a contract each April, I will say, I haven't said this before, but I could say I need a deaf, hard of hearing teacher next year. I need you to staff that for me. They would then hire the deaf, hard of hearing teacher, and then they would charge us the amount it would be for a deaf, hard of hearing teacher. Does that make sense? So they basically are the liaison for those services and working together.
But they don't have any intentions on cutting the services if this doesn't happen, right?
We use pretty minimal amount. We revisit it every year, and every year we reduced it, a little bit here and there, but not significantly.
I guess just going back to the budget thing, he says budgeted. But if we're looking at potential issues in the future, that could be $35,000 less issue that we have to worry about in the future. Regardless.
Well, I mean, if we don't spend 35,000 right now, and we decide to keep it and not do this, that's 35,000 less we gotta worry about next year.
We don't carry
We can't.
budgets, it's a
So
zero-based budget.
what does that?
So it's
So
like
a zero-based budget means that,
use it or lose it.
so if we don't use it, it goes into fund balance. Usually in June, we look at that money.
But I think Ed's point is fund balance supports our overall budget.
Yep.
Right? I don't want to speak for you, but
We wouldn't carry that, we wouldn't say that we didn't use that 35,000 and put it into a budget line next year.
somewhere else, yeah. It's easier for us to incorporate a one-time cost than it is a reoccurring cost. Because then you have to create ongoing space, obviously. If you have other questions before next Monday, I certainly can ask Laura or Nick from.
I do kind of agree with Mike on the budget side and how they handle money, all that stuff. If we're throwing $35,000 at it, especially when we got to take care of our own
Mhm.
here.
I'll reach out to Laura on the budget and see if I can get some specifics from Nick.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. I have no discussion items tonight, and I have two informational items, Fund 10 revenue and expense update.
So we consider end of December to be about half. it is halfway through the fiscal year. Fiscally for expenses, it's about, it is halfway through. However, for wages, it's not quite halfway through just because of the way the contracts work for teachers. We push some of those expenses from the summer back into June, and we'll see those numbers once we get closer to the spring. So from a financial perspective, what I'm getting is that we're about halfway through. So for everything in about, general supplies and some other areas, we would expect to be utilizing about half of the budget. Now for revenues, it's a different story, mainly because we're bound to the timelines of the state and when we collect taxes and whatnot. So you won't see about half of the revenue collected. We will get a lot of that come, taxes are being collected right now. We'll receive payments in the first half of those payments in January. And then once we get closer to June, we'll book the second half of those revenue payments. Finance on the expense side, we'll see that very well. We're not budgeted 57 million. We haven't used which you would expect. So doing well at this point. I don't foresee any scrambling once we get to June. Probably a little bit of a surplus that we'll be able to utilize, either putting into Fund 46 or utilizing on some projects at the end of the year. Email that one to you. Okay. We always like to take a look at our facility rental revenue. We do 3 years worth of data. I know it's something that you guys like to look at. So you'll see 2021, 21, 22, and where we stand thus far for 22, 23. You can see that as we've come out of that COVID era, we've gained revenues in the facility rentals. I'm guessing that we will see an increase this spring. That's usually when we have the majority of the rental revenue come in. So we'll probably take a look at it again June, at the end of the June board meeting, maybe July, just because fiscally will close out in June. So again, no concerns. You can see that we're on the track of gaining revenue each year from it.
Are rentals mostly the athletic fields and those kind of things?
The gyms.
Oh,
We
people.
rent a lot of the gyms. Ella's here, would you say gyms?
Gyms and fields?
The majority contracts with UWS.
Sure.
And most for football.
Okay.
Speaking of which, UWS has plans to create their own space.
They do
That could impact this number in the future, right?
for soccer.
Okay.
We'll still have baseball and softball numbers pretty high. They're supposed to have that done by next fall, so there could be a potential of this number going down. They use it quite a bit for their men's and women's soccer right now. That'll be interesting to compare next year.
Effective starting there. There's like
Starting spring 20 or fall 23, so
okay.
August.
And not that you want it to happen, but you'd like to have maybe a poor spring and then all the area teams will be wanting to play like they did a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Is that it then, Shannon? Oh,
Just touching base on that scoreboard naming rights. I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit, how we're starting to enter into some new contracts for that. We've kind of, with COVID, it got put to the side, but now we're revisiting some of those naming rights, and we've reached out to some of the stakeholders to ask if they'd be interested.
Yeah, right now it's just the 4 big ones that are on the main scoreboard. Their contracts are up in 2019, so they've gotten a few extra years. So right now David and I have been working to contact those businesses that are currently on the scoreboards out at the football and soccer field, just to say, hey, your time's up. We've heard from most of them, and I think we have contracts with 2 of them right now to re-up for their same amount. So that will hopefully, that top line will get bigger soon. So those will be nice. Hoping that it works nicely, that there is a next 5-year gap for them to kind of be in their contract. And then at that point, it's going to be naming rights of the entire complex and the taco scoreboards and all that. It'll be a lot more work at that point, but right now it's going to work out really nice. Hopefully for 5 years, that money will go towards improvements, field repairs and things as we get towards kind of the end of the life of our first.
About 15 years, wasn't it?
Yep.
About 29.
Yep. Yeah, so like I've said, Dave and I have been reaching out and kind of hopefully getting ahead of the game in that aspect, because it will be a very large cost here in 5 years to to keep the fields nice and the community resource that they are. I mean, this line right there shows how much we do get usage from outside just our varsity sport.
Replacement's probably gonna be about 700,000. Yes.
Yeah.
Replacement of the turf? Probably not.
It was 500,000 when we
Yeah,
did
I'd
it.
say close to $1 million.
Yeah.
Okay, because it was like 500,000 when we did it, the turf, just the turf.
And everything's more expensive now.
I know, that's why I said 7 or 750.
And then we have contracts for the scoreboards in the gymnasium at the high school, correct?
Those we do on a yearly basis for the, kind of talking about maybe trying to work something together with Daktronics to get a little bit more. I mean, you go in other gyms around the area in the States and there's more visual advertising, with commercials and video boards and whatnot. So yeah, we're excited about looking at that. That's gonna help businesses be more present, not just at the field, but now if we talk about graduation being out there, that adds a lot more eyes that sometimes don't get to any athletic events too. So I think the businesses are excited to hopefully get their names out there.
All right, that ends my report, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Brooke. Next up, we've got Teaching and Learning Committee, Steve-O.
We have one action item, open enrollment. The administration recommends 60 spaces for general education open enrollment and 0 spaces for special education open enrollment for the 23-24 school year.
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Only that this has been the action item that the board has passed for as long as I've been here and long before.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I have no discussion items. One informational item. Erica Hutton Parker, our Director of Student Services, has a report.
Hi, Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah.
So I have a short report for you tonight. So Student Services is quite a large department, and so I oversee special education, health services, our Medicaid billing, open enrollment, homebound instruction on the medical side. And you have heard from Carrie Saunders at previous board meetings, and she oversees Indian education, mental health, Title IX, English language learners, social workers, McKinney-Vento, Section 504. And I'm sure there's a few things we might have left off here, but it is a quite large department. So tonight, I'm just going to talk to you about special education and our health services. Special education, we have Leanne Weezy, who is our special education coordinator. Right now, we have approximately 43 special education teachers. The asterisk means that we do have some positions that are not filled yet for this year. Related service providers, we have 10 speech language pathologists, 3 occupational therapists, and 2 physical therapists. We also have 7 school psychologists, and we have approximately 115 combination of paraprofessionals and OT-PT assistants. Again, that number tends to fluctuate on any given day based on our student needs, but we're right around 115. So based on September's 3rd Friday count, the percentage of students who receive special education services in Superior is right around 16% of our overall population, which has come down over the years. Our district has been flagged before for over-identification in students who receive services. And so the number is falling, but that's also falling with our enrollment data as well. Health services, we have Bryn Larrabee, who is our health services coordinator. Our health office staff, we have a total of 6 RNs, 2 certified medical assistants, and 2 licensed practical nurses across the district. There is 1 staffed at each elementary. We have 2 staffed at the middle and high schools. Celebrations, special education in Superior, our students with IEPs. We just got the joint federal notification packets out right before break, and that is our data as related to ESSER and IDEA. And so for special education, we are looking at the IDEA rating, and this year we are meeting requirements with no action steps required. And those are the most beautiful words you can ever see. So that's very exciting. That We did not meet requirements last year. So
That's a pretty big deal.
it is a big deal.
Very big deal.
I could have like confetti and stuff.
It's hard to do, especially in a district of this size.
Yeah, it is. It is. So kudos to our special education team. Our score increased from the 2021-22 in math assessment participation, ELA assessment participation, and math proficiency. And we also received points in all areas of compliance. So that's huge. Celebrations in our health office. We are able to provide our health office staff with tools and resources to better support our students and our staff. The health office staff started out this year with training in youth mental health crisis first aid. And all of our school health office staff were also trained in Crisis Prevention Institute CPI to assist when students are in crisis. So that was a new piece that we added this year, as all of our health office staff are part of the school response teams, crisis response. Challenges in our special education department, staffing, that's always a challenge. So for certified and support staff positions, we do have some that are unfilled. Balancing those paperwork requirements and student needs, both are very time consuming. And yep, DPI and the federal government have their paperwork requirements, but we know that our students' needs come first. And so it's always a balancing act. Resources and placement options for students with significant behavioral and mental health needs is definitely a challenge. This is not news to you. You've heard this, I think, from just about everybody who's presented this year, including our principals, which it's hard because we know that right across the river, right across the bridge, there are options that are open to families that just aren't open to us here in Superior. Health services, the health office visit related to anxiety, depression, panic attacks, feeling overwhelmed, et cetera, continue to rise throughout the district for our students. Students and families continue to struggle to secure community resources related to their needs. Again, this isn't anything new. Our goals in special education, as always, compliance with IDEA and DPI requirements. And then we are also working on timely prior written notice to parents, which is 7 to 10 days of parents having those IEPs in their hands before the IEPs implement. And we know this is on DPI's forefront. They've had a lot of guidance about it. And we always know that with DPI, when they're talking about take notice of, it's probably going to turn into some type of policy or rule. So we're working on that this year. In health services, just maintaining our current levels of highly qualified staff through relevant training so that we can continue to meet the wide range of student needs in each building. We are very fortunate here in Superior to have a tremendous health services staff in each of our buildings. Action steps. So special education for the spring of 2023, we are doing a goal book toolkit pilot, and this is to help increase compliance with the DPI paperwork requirements. We also have our steering committee, which is now broken down into work groups. These groups are formed to address the needs of students and staff as they relate to student and staff needs, as well as DPI and federal requirements. In health services, their staff is going to be training for the QPR and suicide assessment during staff development in February so that they can help better address the mental health concerns of those in crisis. That's all I have for you. Questions?
Erica, what program are we using, like IEP Anywhere? And are we
Using Fed forms.
Fed forms, and how many years now? So we have some consistency.
3, I think this is our 3rd year.
I think that helps. Having
It's not perfect though.
No.
there, I don't think any of us.
Changes all of the forms.
Right.
When DPI changes the forms, it's brand new ball game. So just when you get used to something, they change it.
It does help us that we're using that program because it utilizes, so Minnesota districts often utilize that. So it's helpful when we have
Yeah.
Are we aware of any sort of way or ideas about tracking students reporting mental health symptoms? And by that, I mean, whether it's psychosomatic, so they're coming in saying upset stomach, right? Or what,
Yeah.
other, when I say psychosomatic, I mean, it's coming out as a
Sure.
physical concern. Do we have any way of tracking those contacts? And if we do, the reason I'm asking is because that may provide us with some information to potentially lead to staffing changes or increases around those. I see nurses' offices that are full.
Yeah.
In nurses' office, and I've been in buildings for a long time where kids come down and they report other issues, but really it's anxiety, it's depression, it's panic, it's other things.
And yeah, and that's a great question. That's where that list came from in the presentation was Bryn compiled some of those logs from the health offices because the nurses and the health office staff, they do write down when the students come in, whether it's, are they getting a med that's administered at school? Is it, they throw up? Do they have, they do report what the symptoms are that the students are presenting.
And I just want to say they do a tremendous job of doing that. I know they do. And so I wonder about as a board, if we were ever approached, that might be some information that we could use. Because I know we've talked regularly about wanting to increase mental health supports. This seems like a great opportunity to potentially put our money where our mouth is in that regard. So I would love to see any ideas that are out there to continue to support what we've already added.
I know that, our nurses do already have training and do a lot of support when it comes to mental health support. I mean, they are part of that crisis team when it comes to, especially at the secondary level. I will say just in our conversations with Bryn, I'm kind of looking to you for validation. I feel like our staffing model is good right now. The busiest office in our entire district is probably the middle school nurse's office. And then second to that is probably the high school nurse's office.
Yeah.
I mean, all offices, not just nurse's office. That is the busiest office in the district. But I do feel like we're adequately staffed and I'm hearing that from her.
Yep.
And so I think it's a matter of just utilizing our whole team when it comes to supporting those students, whether it's counselors, social workers, nurses, teachers. Yeah.
Yeah, I just happened to be in a unique situation where we had a nurse's office right outside of my office and I was working on it with ESSER funds. So nurses would literally bring kids to me and ask for support. It was a system we didn't plan. It was a system we didn't intend to implement, but it seemed to be a very successful model for a lot of the kids. So I'd just bring it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there things that we as a board can do to help? Because we keep on hearing this mental health crisis and it's again, nationwide. I know that, but it's a pretty helpless feeling, I think.
That might be in the next board agenda.
All right.
Legislative.
Supporting the professional development needs that we have as staff as they relate to the student needs and just being supportive of those pieces is extremely helpful. Because, we are all here for the kids and the needs do change from year to year. And it's just trying to keep up with that to best help them while they're in our buildings.
My curiosity questions was, can you tell me percentage wise how many kids are on IEPs in the district?
16%. So 16% of what is our overall population? 4,300.
So
Go ahead.
that's pre-K through 12.
Yep, pre-K through 12. So the typical national average is right around 9 to 11%. That was before COVID. Everyone has seen an increase post-COVID.
What was our percent 4 years ago when you referenced the fact it was
20 something.
It was 20 something.
That's what I thought. When I first got here, it was alarmingly high.
Yeah. When I came on board at Northern Lights as the AP 4 years ago, I think in that building alone, it was 23%. And I literally thought it was a typo on the state report.
That was a quarter of our population.
Yeah. The district has done a really nice job over the years of taking a hard look at that number and there's the difference in students with disabilities and students that just need some extra support and help. And so our EMLSS teachers are another layer to that. So we are on the right track.
Now you just said there's few unfilled positions.
Yeah.
How many positions and what kind of positions get you to where you need to be?
We have an early childhood special education position that is still open that we are utilizing. I think a half-time long-term sub. We have a position at the high school that is still open, that they have done some reconfiguring with schedules and staff schedules to help meet the student needs there. Paraprofessional positions, those can fluctuate with student needs because You know, you get some students that might transfer in that have some significant paraprofessional support, and then all of a sudden you have to find that coverage from someplace.
Erica, the teacher vacancies we have, one at the high school is a result of increased caseload. So we were fully staffed at the beginning of the year, but then caseloads increased. Is that correct?
That's part, yes.
So we've made a intentional effort in trying to support the caseloads at that building and hiring. And then the one at ECSC, is that due to the staff vacancy that happened mid-year?
No, we had a staff vacancy going into the year, and so then the staff member that resigned mid-year, that brought us to two positions that went unfilled, and so we had to do some moves to fill those positions, because early childhood that's a critical time for kids, and that's where you get, you know, you get all your birth to 3 referrals, and so we're better in that position than where we were at the beginning of the school year. I think that Jen and Molly had done some work as far as finding a long-term sub to fill the one vacancy that we can't even get a candidate for. So
the licensure in that area is very challenging.
it is.
So just in general, to hire a early childhood special ed teacher, what are the criteria? What's the licensure state?
Yep, they have to have a specific early childhood special ed license,
So they can't have like a regular special education license where they work in elementary school, right?
because that won't cover the like 3, 4, 5
Right.
year olds.
So that creates an additional challenge for early childhood special ed.
Yeah. And cross-categorical special education, like special ed as a whole with licensing, is challenging because a lot of licenses prior to the last 3 years are going to be like a grade 1 to 6. Well, that doesn't cover kindergarten. That falls at a different level. So we have newer teachers who are getting licensed, and they're getting licensed kindergarten through grade 12. And so it can be very challenging depending on how long staff have had their licensures for. And it used to be where you would get licensed in specific areas such as emotional behavioral disability, learning disability, autism, and they've moved to the cross-categorical model in the state. So it's quite fun.
So I got one more question. This might be a crazy question, but you're the expert, not me. I know there's a broad range of reasons kids can be on IEPs. There are times that kids on IEPs from year to year, or they on it K through 12.
No, the intention is never for anything to be in place permanently. I mean, you know, in Texas, they use the model admission review dismissal because it's used as a support. And an IEP is really a system of supports to help that student gain as much independence as possible with their specific set of skills that they need to reach. And so while we do have some students who are going to utilize that IEP all throughout their K-12 career and will need additional supports from the community as they move into adulthood, yes, but then we also have students who utilize those supports for a certain period of time and then they are dismissed.
And it's done on an annual basis and then on a 3-year eval. So
Yeah.
there's constant looking, you know, the team would sit down yearly with the parents, the child, other support people, and make some decisions and see where that child, where the disability was and have they met the criteria to dismiss them. So
Yep.
they are in place.
Yeah, the state does have criteria in the eligibility areas for students to meet eligibility, but then there is also some criteria for what would it look like for a student to meet like a dismissal, where they no longer require those services to meet expectations.
Thank you.
You can reach out anytime if you have more questions.
I have a question, if that's okay. Yeah.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, guys. So I'm masking because my son is home, so I have to stay masked at home as well. So one of the things I was reading in the school magazine they send out is about allergies, and dietary things are also part of 504 plans. Can you just explain that a little more to me? I was kind of surprised that allergies and dietary specifications would count towards those numbers too, it sounds like.
No, 504 is different than special education. 504 is it's kind of the federal catch-all for students that have disabilities. It's just not funded.
Yeah,
Like-
we received no funding.
Yeah, we receive no funding.
No funding.
Yeah,
An individual may have a disability, but not all
Yeah.
individuals with a disability would qualify for special education. So students with severe allergies may qualify for a health plan or some sort of accommodations that would be documented on what's called a 504 plan.
and it could be too, Laura, that students could be served on just a health plan that doesn't require a 504 plan. There's like a continuum for those needs as well. It depends on each student and what the severity is.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
That concludes.
All right, thank you. All right, next up, we've got the legislative committee with Ed.
So we have no action items. One discussion item is to review school district legislative priorities. I think that kind of goes with the next bullet point too, so I'm gonna loop them together. The next bullet point, review 2023 proposed resolutions for the WASB Delegate Assembly. And if you were to open up that pack and look at it, these are basically resolutions that WASB is either approved or doesn't approve, or wants to change, everything from transportation reasons to going down learning barriers of students, disabilities. I mean, there's several different topics. It's like 14 pages long. But these are all resolutions that WASB has taken on, either want to create or modify. That goes back to the first bullet point of the legislative priorities. I know we talked last year or at the end of the last year there about truancy issues. We talked about attendance and the difficulties of, I guess, getting county assistance for kids that are truant without having to put them through essentially a criminal justice system. And so that's something that I think we could start thinking about as far as attendance reasons and how we can get kids assistance without going through those particular channels, but working with the county. And then again, like Brooke was talking about earlier, this would be one of those channels for mental health. Going down to the state legislator and advocating for mental health up in the northern area, basically north of Eau Claire, which we all know is neglected. So.
Can I speak to a couple of those points? So Shannon and I have been working to try to put together a narrative that we want to share with the board and have the board, give its blessing. And then I'm working with David to put this together in a way that we can share it with our local lawmakers, share it with folks down in Madison as we're having those conversations. There's three main points that I guess I'd like to bring forward for the board to consider as part of our legislative priorities. The very first that I think is most important is around the revenue limit and increasing that, as well as the per pupil general aid. Do you want to speak a little bit to the history there? We've talked about it before, but do you want to talk a little bit about what our request is?
I can see the revenue limits. In 92, they set the caps on the revenue. Well, in 1992, if you were a fiscally responsible district and your per pupil amount on the revenue limit wasn't high, it remained at that amount. Now in the subsequent years, they have allowed us to increase it most recently by $300, and that ended in 2017-18, increase up to $300 each year, up to $10,000 per student, and that's where we sit right now. So what we're asking is that in this next biennial budget, that they allow at a minimum a $250 increase subsequently for every
Annually?
And not putting a cap on years. I think that before the 3 years, it's just to increase in spending with that it's going to end and you're going to do it. If you're giving increases and then your state aid isn't backfilling it and you reach that cap, you're not able to continue those processes. And then we're also asking for an additional $100 per pupil And the student aid, right now it's $742. We're asking for a $100 increase that allows us to have about $420,000 additional revenue each year. That's not tied to anything specific. It's not related. It's just something that we can use through final education.
And the primary reason, besides the fact that we have inflated costs across our system and the revenue hasn't kept up with those costs, we've had to really maintain and attract staffing, and we've had to increase salaries, provide those bonuses, provide retention strategies, and without some sort of increase, it'll be challenging to maintain our staffing and our programs beyond 2024 when we no longer have ESSER funds. So that's one area that we feel very strongly that we need to be advocating as a school board in Madison. The other area is something we've talked about before, is just the continued advocacy for making sure we get reimbursement for special education costs. Off the top of your head, do you know how much we transfer over annually for special education?
We've averaged a little over $6 million in transfers.
Those are unreimbursed costs.
Right now it's I believe it is at a 30% reimbursement. I know that at one point they were talking about a 92% rate, but I think it's going to be concerned.
Yeah, I think they were talking about like 64% was the target for reimbursement.
Which obviously would.
And then the last area that I think we need to talk through is mental health supports. And so we've used a lot of our ESSER funds to add mental health people, really. We've added counselors, we've added social workers, without ESSER funds, we need to really figure out how we're going to continue to maintain our mental health supports. Those needs won't go away, and they've only just continued to increase, as you and Jason today. Historically, the state of Wisconsin, when they have supported mental health, it has always been through one-time grant money. And you just can't hire people with one-time funds. And so they really need to create a categorical aid where there's reoccurring sustainable funds to be able to maintain the level of support that we have. So from our perspective, we feel those are three really, really important things that we need as we're thinking about our budget beyond this school year.
Is there anything we can do to partner with the city? Because I know that mental health is also a priority of the cities. How can we make this bigger where we can attract attention? Because this far north, I know we even lack resources.
Yeah, we've talked about it at Superior Days. So Superior Days is when community comes together and really talks about what are our specific regional issues that we need to be advocating for at the Capitol. This issue comes up all the time. It typically is based in Medicaid reimbursement. So we continue to we're not able to have the same level of services and supports in Superior, because across the bridge, you can set up shop and receive far more funding.
My license per contact would pay $25, and it might have changed. I have to look again, but LACSW is the licensed clinical social worker. If I met with somebody through Medicaid reimbursement, I would get $25 a contact, and in Duluth, it'd be $125. So from a business perspective and being open for business, I think what we could do is look at recruiting strategies as we would for any business to alleviate other costs. So any other overhead that someone might incur, so that they could potentially get a grant and make it feasible to make $25 a contact. And from my understanding, it's really anybody who's not a PhD level is significantly less than someone at a PhD level.
But I would argue your point is really important in that this is not just a school district issue, this is a community issue, and we do need to be thinking about this collectively. I will say that the city of Superior has heard us and has been a good partner. They just wrote a grant about 6 months ago for the encouragement clinic. That encouragement clinic is being able to be funded because they're able to fill that gap that those reimbursement rates don't fill. The only problem with the encouragement clinic is it's kind of like short-term support. They don't really have long-term services. So students can be seen for like 6 sessions or something like that, and then they have to let them go. But that has been one good partnership that we've had as a result of these ongoing conversations.
And it is included on the Superior Days agenda. I'll be going down there and lobbying on behalf of some issues. So that's another one that they continue to push for sure.
Great. Thanks, Laura. So those were kind of the three big topics. When you talk about attendance and truancy barriers, and not funneling students through the criminal justice system, I'd like to see a partnership maybe with the county and how we could maybe create some language together and collectively. I wouldn't want to make a push from a school district perspective without involving them because they play a large role. And so I'd like maybe their help in drafting what that could look like. I think it's a big task, but I think it's an important one.
My hope today was that we'd go over the resolutions that WASB had sent out to us so that Steve-O, as our delegate, had input from school board members about how to vote on that down in Madison or Milwaukee.
Yeah, we're still on the first bullet, Laura, but we'll get to that.
All right, sorry.
Yep. So before we move to Laura's point about the delegate, can we move forward and share some documents with you as our legislative priorities on those top issues? Am I missing anything? Okay. All right. So we'll move forward with that and we'll share with you a draft probably in the next week or so. All right. So with that, the delegate piece, I don't know how you want to handle that part, Ed.
Would you like me to read all 14 pages? Or top topics, or how we want to do this?
I think we're all capable of reviewing them and bringing them to the next meeting. If we have concerns, if we have things we want to talk about, prioritize them, we could list them numerically. I think of a lot of different ways we could do that. That isn't in session, but that's my take on it.
Yeah. Guess I'd say if there's something you disagree with, we'll bring it up.
Or something that's missing, or if we have questions or concerns about the context of each one.
For the purpose of transparency, I would recommend that Ed would read the different resolutions, and you don't have to go through the rationale, but I think we should talk about what they're proposing, and that would not take too long.
I don't agree. Guess if you guys want, we're gonna vote on it, or?
What's the majority one, I guess? I mean, I'll read them if that's what everybody wants.
These are available for everyone to see online.
Everybody has them, community has them, people, anybody.
They're linked into the agenda.
Right. Well, that's,
We've not totally read through them all in the past. I would say that if we review them and next week we go through them and kind of just decide if there's something we want to.
Can I make a suggestion that if people have concerns about any of these, they bring those forward. If you feel like these are satisfactory, we just let that go. But if you have concerns, we bring it out at the board level and the board can discuss it. Does that sound fair?
Yep. I mean, if there's something that we're adamant about that we want to see pushed through, that to make sure that we're voting the way that the board wants to be voted on each one of these.
For example, for our newest folks, this was the stage that we used to really move forward with the change in the social worker licensure. And we were able to get support at the delegate assembly, and then we were able to move that forward at the state level. So
Same thing with Safe Harbor.
yes.
So what we did both times is prepare talking points. And I think, again, we need to speak as one voice. And if, there's specific things that affect our district, I think it'd be great to, have specific talking points if anyone wanted to share those with Steve. I'm the CISA delegate, so I do the same thing with the CISA board and make sure they're aware and share with me any specific points they'd want to have brought up.
I think it's important then that each one of us take the responsibility to collectively look at each one of these, make your notes, and then bring them forward to next week's meeting.
Yep.
And Steve, you are the delegate, but you will not be attending.
Yeah, Laura, I will not be attending now.
Steve Stupak will be representing our district.
I mean, and you can make changes to these down there, but I can tell you that they've already been through these twice. I made it to the last one and spent 6 hours. So
I've done these before. I've been there.
all right, so review and bring back your comments next week.
All right, then that concludes the discussion items. Move on to informational items. First one, budget writing legislative committee membership is set. Senate Majority Leader, I'm going to butcher some names here. Devin LeMahieu. He announced Senate committees and committee membership for the 2023-2024 legislative session. You can see the full article by clicking the link there. Next one, Rep. Joel Kitchens to chair the Assembly Education Committee. Speaker Robin Voss has announced the membership of the Assembly Standing Committees for 2023-2024 legislative sessions. That begins with the inauguration of members on January 3rd, today. And the last one, Senator John Jagler to chair Senate Education Committee. Senate Majority Leader Devin LeMahieu announced Senate committees and committee membership for the 2023-2024 legislative session. State Senator John Jagler has been announced as chair of the Senate Committee on Education. He has been a member of the Senate Education Committee under retired former chair Alberga Darling, as well as the Assembly Education Committee before being elected to the state Senate. You can read that full article. All the articles came from legislative updates from WASB on their website, and they're available to the public and everybody else here. And that will conclude the legislative committee section.
All right. Good. All right, next we'll move into Operations Committee with Steve Stupak.
I have no action items tonight. I have no discussion items tonight, but I do have two informational items. Mr. David C., Transportation Director, will provide us an update regarding the high school pickup, drop-off, and bus safety plan.
Sandy here. So we met with Aaron Fezzi and the SRO officer, Officer Darst. Went on spring or Christmas break. Put together a plan to have somebody to have supervision for students out in that area when we pick up. I went out there today to check and see how it went for the first day. Went really well. The amount of parents that were there really declined. At one point in time, I seen Aaron out there. Ivy Secrets was out there and also the SRO. Still had 5 or 6 parents. I went and talked to about 4 of them. They all were surprised about that big sign in the front that said, "Don't come back here." It's going to be the same one every time. At one point in time, I went and talked to one and Officer Darcy said, "How'd that go?" And I go, "Good." And he goes, "Well, I'm surprised she can cuss you out, but she swears at me every day." So it's the same ones all the time. I also started where we started talking to the students as well, saying, "Hey, your parents can't pick up here. You got to go to E16. It's just going to be an ongoing battle. I think the key is in the next 2 weeks, we're going to really hit it hard. Then parents are going to understand the new norm. They're going to get the new practice, start going to the other doors they need to. So it was really nice to see Mr. Fezzi, Heidi, and the SRO all out this afternoon. So we're making good progress.
And I think Principal Fezzi has sent some emails clearly outlining what the expectations are for pickup and drop off, right?
Yep, and it was at the meeting we had prior to break, and Aaron was on board with it, and he's really pushing it out. It's just going to be, once we set that precedent, force it, then we'll just go back every once in a while, but I think they're going to have supervision out there, similar to what they do at the middle school, to make sure that not only are the parents following the rules, the kids are safe out there. And, pickup is my most, stressful time. And that's when the bad stuff's going to happen, it's going to do it during a pickup or a drop off. So getting the support in the high school has been great.
Thanks, Dave. And second of all, I have Mr. Bobby Atherley, Director of Buildings and Grounds. He will provide us with an update on department staffing throughout the district.
Mine's actually easier than what it says on there. We've got a couple custodian positions that are vacant right now, so we're hiring for custodians. So if anybody knows of anybody looking for some good work, please send them to our district website and apply. Appreciate it. That's it.
Thanks, Bob. Well, Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thanks, Steve. All right, last up, we've got Mike with the Personnel Negotiations Committee.
Oh, yeah, one action item. I haven't said that often. Administration recommends approval of the January 2023 new hires, transfers, and separations report.
Move to approve. Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
List.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, and I have nothing else. That concludes my report.
All right, are there any comments by members of the public tonight? Do you have any comments? Hearing none, then our meeting is adjourned.
Drive safe.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Stay safe. Thank you.